So Moses, first, maybe you could update us on how Bobby is doing, where he's doing. Some of you may know that he returned to Uganda last week and was arrested at the airport, at the Entebbe airport in Kampala.
Thank you so much for having me.
Is that on?
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go.
Thank you so much for coming, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here tonight. It's the power of God that I'm here today to share this film with you. And I feel very blessed and honored to share this film with the world. Today, as we speak, yes, Bobi arrived back home in Uganda from a trip, yes, promoting the film, but also some political engagements about 6 days ago. And he was picked up from an airplane, literally dragged out of an airplane onto the tarmac, bundled into a van, driven to a military facility, and then put into another vehicle, and then driven to his house. He didn't go through immigration. Legally, he's not in Uganda, you know. But and the Ugandan independence was 3 days ago, on the 9th of October, a day when Uganda is 61 years independent, should be 61 years independent, but two leaders of the National Unity Platform were kidnapped, bundled into a van, driven to a police detention center, held for hours. Over 300 NUP, National Unity Platform and People Power activists arrested all over the country. So that's the situation in Uganda. But they are very hopeful and still championing the fight for freedom and democracy. I must say that we hope that this film can highlight to international audiences what it means to not have a democracy. We've actually never had a democracy in Uganda. Museveni, the current president, has been in power for 37 years. 37. Since Ronald Reagan, we've had the same president, you know. He came to power through a military, a civil, through a military it's a sad place, you know. A democratic government had been elected in 1981. Museveni went into the bush and fought a 5-year war. You got over 500,000 people died in central Uganda. He came into power, you know, really saying what Bobi says today. You know, as you saw in the film, Bobi actually says this. He was saying exactly the same things. You know, he was a very promising leader, but 37 years later, he has become a shadow of himself. Kidnappings continue in the country. People disappear. As you saw on November 18th and 19th, people shot in the streets by the army and the military. So this film it's a very urgent story, and we hope that world audiences will see this. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, we sense your emotion, and this is your homeland. And I wasn't going to ask that initially, but you're living in Los Angeles now, and it's not by choice. As a result of this film, you can no longer live in Uganda, which is, I mean, a terrible loss at a personal level. So you too are among those who are suffering as a result of what's happened in your country.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, in the 5 to 6 years of following Bobby, I had to flee the country on the 17th of March 2022. At that point, there had been 2 attempted kidnaps on my wife. I had been shot in the face while filming. I had been locked up in prison. I had been interrogated, and I had been intimidated, and they tried to get me to stop filming. But the task was urgent. It's not just the story of Uganda. This is the story of largely so many countries in the world today. Democracies are eroding. We are losing the democratic system. The world is tending towards totalitarian regimes. But we hope that world audiences can see this urgency, and really, this is a clarion call to the West, the keepers of democracy, to see what it means if you don't have it or if you lose that democracy, most especially America, Yeah.
So Moses, take us back to when you first became aware of Bobby's music, and then were inspired, like so many Ugandans, as we see in the film, inspired by his political message.
So Bobby, he's an incredible musician, as you see. He's like a true hero, living hero in Africa right now. His music has always been consistent, and growing up, I was listening to his music. He would always respond to misrule in Uganda with a song. This is way before he became a politician. His music was like, rebel music. And I loved his music. In 2017, he won an election as an MP with over 85% of the election. So he was very popular, very charismatic. And at the time, he was speaking to my heart. He was saying the things that I wanted to hear. As a young Ugandan at the time, I had never voted, never participated in an election. Like many, many young Ugandans, at that point, politics was very violent. You don't want to go to a rally because, as you've seen in the film, there's going to be, the military will unleash this violence on the electorate. But anyways, so when he was saying these things, these are the things that the youth wanted to hear, and largely the population wanted to hear. So he was asking us all to get involved. And I was like, this guy. And around the same time, Christopher Sharp, the co-director of the film and producer, reached out, and we were introduced by a friend, and we met, and he's like, Moses, I want to make this film. And for me, it was a blessing to be there, to capture this moment in history, this revolution that was happening in my country. And yeah.
What would you say is Bobby's greatest strength or his power as a political leader?
Bobby is a very interesting individual. He's very selfless and very courageous, as you've seen, very brave. But also he trusts people around him. He always says he feels inadequate, to the point that he gets the people around him that are smart to like, how would I say, for lack of a better word, he's not the politician. He says he's not a politician. He's a musician, and he doesn't want to be called a politician. It's a very interesting quality, I think, because he doesn't have this strong man thing around him. One time I asked him, Bobby, what will you do in the 5 years? And he's like, I'll return the country to the people. I want to bring back institutions, and I want to protect the people from the president or from myself. And I said, no, but you would need like 10 years to do these things. Like, no, I want to be in power for 5 years, and that's it. And yeah, he's like really self-sacrificing. And
Yeah, I think there's some parallels. Some of you may feel to President Zelensky in Ukraine, and clearly somebody who's not a politician and yet rises to this moment in an extraordinary way. We see some very disturbing scenes in the film, of course, of beatings, of Bobby being seized. There's the assassination of his driver. But I'm sure there's quite a bit that you left out. And I as I understand it, Bobby, at first, when he saw the first cut, he's like, wait a minute, you're being too nice to Museveni here. Yeah. But talk about what you felt you needed to leave out, and striking that balance of both conveying the violence that happens there all the time and yet not overwhelming an audience. So,
of course, in the 6 years of following this story, as you see, there's so much. This is almost 2 hours, but we had about 4,000 hours of footage. I was with Bobby every day. I would sometimes leave him passed out on a couch at 4 a.m. in a studio in downtown Kampala, and then I show up the next morning and I'm with him and we're running, going. Many times I filmed people who had been maimed, his supporters, individuals who had, been locked up in unknown detention centers, and women who had been raped, and gruesome scenes, I mean, some things I can't say here, but very graphic things. But that was the reality that we were living. So when Bobby saw the film and the Secretary General of the party, David Lewis, and we didn't show them the film until the end, when we were done. So they saw the film and they were like, guys, you've been so nice to Museveni. We're giving him, this is good for him. And we're like, no, actually, no. But they wanted us to show everything that happened, But to tell the story, we wanted world audiences to also see the hope in Uganda, to see the hope that they embody, And as you see, they're very hopeful, regardless of what has happened. They are very hopeful, and they want to push that message of hope and resilience and courage, and continuing to fight for freedom, Yeah.
So we see a little bit in the film, but you could liken it a bit to North Korea, where Yoweri Museveni, the president, would like this to become a hereditary dictatorship. He wants to pass it off to his son. I'm curious about whether there's any way to show the film in Uganda, or any kind of response you may have had from the Museveni government about it.
Well, I don't know if they've seen the film, but I think they have, because Bobby went back to Uganda and he was picked up like a thief or something, total disregard of the law, and we were really worried that there was going to be some kind of retaliation, but just like Matt said, the Ugandan incumbent president Museveni has rewarded his son, these military ranks, and his son is now almost equal to him in military ranks, and they're preparing him to take over the country. But we've had great opportunities for Uganda to change. We've had, before Bobby, there was Kizza Besigye, who was also intelligent. And, a lot of elections were rigged. But all these avenues of peaceful change have been closed, all the opportunities we've had. And you see the same pattern. That's exactly what happened in Sudan, with Bashir. And now the country has descended into a civil war. it's becoming a tribal war, you know. It's becoming a very ethnic war now. And then, you know, the Western governments see these immigration crises, and then the problem is actually right on the continent, you know. The Sahel region is, you know, there's all these coups happening, Niger and, you know, Gabon, and I mean, the chaos within Africa is the cause of the immigration crises. And it's not that the immigrants choose to just get onto these harrowing journeys. No, it's because they're looking for safety, you know. But these problems can be abated from back home, from sorting out the governance problem within Africa, not by building walls or, you know, preventing people to crossing the English Channel, or you know, chasing down these boats in the Mediterranean with 700, 600 individuals. No, the problem has to be sorted from the origin, you know. Yeah, because they'll build the walls, the people will continue coming because they can't. There's no safety. There are no opportunities, you know. Yeah.
So we may have time for one or two questions. There is a reception afterwards. So, but if you have,
There's one coming.
think yes, and there's a mic going around. Thank
Sorry.
you.
I'll come to you.
Thank you so much. It's an incredible film. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you negotiated that kind of access with Bobby and his family. Like, were you there every day? Was it hard to convince him? All of that stuff. As a documentary filmmaker, I'd like to know.
So we were very lucky. Bobby, he was a star. He's very well documented. He's a very well documented artist. He had been, he had a TV show. He was very aware of entertainment and film, and he's an actor himself. So when Christopher reached out and shared the story, we met, and he was just like, yeah, let's go. And he was like, this is an opportunity. Until today, he says, this has been an opportunity through him, a window is opened into what's happening in Uganda. So he saw it as an opportunity, and he's been very incredible, and he gave us so much access. We, not at any point did he, stop us from filming or anything. We got to a point where when I wasn't around, when I wasn't there, they noticed very quickly, and I had to be present, because at some point the camera became like a protection, it became a protection, because sometimes when the military would know that there's cameras around, they would do less, yeah.
Okay, I have time for one more question.
I'm sorry, I'm just sort of baffled. To what do you attribute the support? Because there is real support for the president. To what do you attribute it when he's so clearly corrupt?
There's very little support for Museveni. A lot of the supporters he has are paid to be, there's so much corruption. And you see the vote in parliament, those, like a week before the vote, every member of parliament received 100 million, about $30,000 on their account, including the opposition. Bobby got that money, took it back into the consolidated fund. So even those who voted against the bill were sent this money, So it's not that he enjoys this support because people like him. No. He pays for it, And a lot of the money aid money that comes into Uganda ends up doing these kinds of things, Uganda receives $1 billion. $1 billion.
Per year.
Per year from the U.S. government alone. That's so much money. So, yeah. And of course, he uses intimidation and the military, and as you've seen in the film. Yeah.
Well, we do have a reception in the back to the right. Follow the line. We'll all get there somehow. Let's all thank Moses Buello for joining us today. Bobi Wine, the people's president. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.